Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Miss Ruth Douthitt. Ruth is an award-winning Christian fiction writer based out of Phoenix, Arizona. She currently writes suspense fiction, women's inspirational fiction, and fantasy fiction. She is also a writing workshop teacher, speaker, professional artist, a podcaster, runner, and an avid reader of biographies and history. She loves all things creative, and today she's here. She's going to share with us a little bit more about her background in writing, what kind of got her in influence in writing, the books that she has come out with, and just everything in between. So, Ruth, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and hearing from you. And welcome to Southern Reads.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
So, tell me just kind of the backstory and share with me how you got into writing and what kind of influenced you to become a writer.
Okay. Well, I was always an artist first since a child. And so my passion was always art, drawing, and painting. But I entered a poetry contest my senior year in high school and won. And so I thought, well, maybe I have writing in my, abilities too. But I kind of just put it on the back burner and went to college for art and studied art and everything. And then when we got married, we moved to a state far away from Arizona. So I had a lot of time on my hands because my husband was overseas a lot. And I would go to the library. And that's when I kind of had the idea that maybe I could blend my art with my love of writing and books and write and illustrate a children's book. So that's kind of where it started. That was around 1989. But then life happened. We got out of the Marine Corps, moved back home, had a boy, and I went to work full time, so everything got put back on the back burner. But it was around 2004 I went to Arizona State to finish my degree, and I took a creative writing course just for fun. And after class one day, I was telling my teacher a little bit about my story. It was a fantasy book about a boy who enters a mysterious forest called the Dragon Forest. And he really liked the premise and he showed me how to outline it. And that got me super excited about this story that I had forgotten for so many years. So I just sat down at the computer late at night and just started writing while listening to really cool music like Lord of the Rings or Gladiator, and it just spurred me on. So around 2008, I finished it. And then I thought, well, now what? And so this was before Facebook started taking off really big. There were chat rooms. And so I went into a chat room for other authors, and they were kind of giving me some tips. So I sent it to a small house publisher, and she really liked my idea, and she contracted me for 3 books. So that was a blast. I thought, wow, someone believes in my story. So that's kind of what started. And in 2011, my book came out, and I was holding it in my hands, and I thought, wow, I honestly never in a million years thought this was going to happen. So it was kind of a dream come true. And while I was waiting for book two to come out, I was teaching middle grade writing classes, and my students loved my books and they were always asking, when's your next book coming out? So I thought I'm just going to self-publish a few stories on my own while I'm waiting for the other book about the Dragon Forest to release. And that's when I did the children's series, The Children Under the Ice, the Children in the Garden, and the Children of Manor House. And it was like a spooky ghost story series with kind of a Scooby-Doo vibe to it. It was set in the 1970s and it was about these kids who are detectives. They're trying to find out who killed these kids and they're solving crimes with the help of ghosts. So that was fun. I found that I had a real passion for self-publishing because I could whip out these books in like 4 months, as opposed to waiting almost 2 years for a book to come out. And my students loved it. They'd say, when's the next book coming? And I'd say, in 6 months. And they'd be all excited. So I kind of thought, I'm going to just self-publish for a little while. And I got the rights back to my dragon books and just self-published those with brand new covers that I created. And around 2017, I just decided that's what I'm going to do from now on. So I have been writing, YA contemporary books for kids, middle school fantasy books, coloring books, and then I decided to start writing for adults. So I started with a fun, what I call women's adventure fiction set in Italy. And that series did really well. And so I thought I would try suspense, which is my favorite genre to read. And I thought, well, maybe I could write suspense. So I started writing that. It's been so much fun. Yeah, so I just decided to self-publish and I never really looked back. It's been a blast.
Yeah, and being a self-publishing author, you also get so much freedom and creative control over what you do and how you go about publishing it and sharing it out there. Do you think having it self-published gave you a little bit more freedom and gave you a little
Oh,
bit more of a relaxed feel when it came to promoting and having the book be out in just a nick of time?
yes, absolutely. I mean, I have friends who are traditionally published and they'll start writing a book and come up with a title, but then the publisher will change the title. They have no say about the cover. Sometimes they're happy with the covers and sometimes they're not. And so I love that. I don't know about you, but I like to design the cover first. And I have a Trello board and I put it up there kind of like a vision board. And then I write the story and that cover kind of inspires me to keep going, and I create a pre-order on Amazon Kindle. And then that keeps, that holds me accountable. I have to finish this book and get it done by a certain time. So you're right. I mean, as an artist, I taught, graphic design, so I know how to do my own covers. I love having that freedom of choosing my titles. And I hire my editor, and she and I have been working together for a long time. She's amazing. So yeah, it really does give you a lot of freedom. I thought I had to be pigeonholed into one genre, since I started as fantasy. I thought I had to stay there. But I interviewed on my podcast a really prolific author named Melody Carlson, and she started with YA suspense, and then she just started writing romantic comedies, and then started writing romance novels. And she's well known for her Christmas novellas. And I was amazed. I said, I didn't know you could do that. She says, Oh yeah, just write whatever you want to, Ruth. You're not pigeonholed into one genre. So I took her advice and I just started writing what I wanted to write. And it's been so wonderful that I'm not stuck into one genre.
Now, for you, which genre do you feel the most comfortable writing in and the genre that really showcases your creativeness?
Oh, I think fantasy. I'll always have a dragon book out there. I just love writing fantasy because it's not easier because you're making up this whole world in your head, right? And you have to create dragon battles, and it's not like you can just picture them. I have to watch movies to get me excited about it. I have to visualize what it is. But I have really great beta readers who help me out with that. But it's more challenging because you're world building, but it's also so much fun, and I really get to be creative with the names and the lands and the world building that I'm doing, the dragons, who they are, what they're going to be. So that's my passion, I think, is fantasy. In some aspects, it's easier for me, but in other aspects, it's really difficult. Now, suspense has proven to be really easy because I worked in the criminal court system for a while, so I saw a lot of trials, really interesting criminal trials that this was like 20 years ago that I just started. It just really got my creative juices flowing. I thought, what if, a serial killer did this, or what if a killer did that? I just started writing down all these story ideas. So I have about a dozen of those. And that's been a pretty easy genre to write. But I do make up like fictional towns because I don't want readers to say, hey, that's where I grew up and there's no street on that. There's no street, named that. So I make fictional towns and that's kind of fun. That's easier. I think the world building's easier with suspense genre than fantasy, but I hope that answers your question. For me, it's always going to be fantasy. It's just so much fun. And that's why I like to do fantasy coloring books too.
For you, so of the books that you've come out with, what was the first book that you remember putting out?
Oh, The Dragon Forest was my first book. And I haven't read it in a while, but I'd say it's not my best book because I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I did, but I didn't. And I forgot that with a middle grade audience, they want action right away. So that book, the action doesn't really happen to like chapter 4, which is a big no-no. You're supposed to get the action started a lot sooner. So I've learned that over the years, and now the action starts, like in chapter 1. But I think as far as the story, that one's my favorite because the dragon is like this stalwart figure. He's misunderstood, and the boy finds that out. And the dragon is really there to protect the kingdom, not destroy it. So that was special to me to have him be like this father figure. And the dragons they speak their own language, and certain characters can communicate with them. So I thought that was pretty fun too. But yeah, so that one will always stay with me. That was my first book. I was heavily inspired by the King Arthur series of books and the Lord of the Rings, of course, that those epic, adventures. It's this epic story, three-book story of Peter and his friends and what they go through. So I think that will stay with me forever.
Now, I know in some of your books that you kind of openly talk a lot about some tough topics, and you do kind of showcase a lot of what some of your personal life in there. Is it difficult to talk about these difficult things that you've been through and maybe what others have been through? Is it difficult on writing about tough topics?
It can be. I mean, The Road to Home was my YA contemporary book. That's probably my most autobiographical book. It's about a young girl whose mom died, and the girl kind of blames herself and uses her art to cope with what she's feeling. And I did that. When my mom died 10 years ago, I dove into my art and just used it to express and to cope with grief. And she really had a hard time because her father marries right away and picks up and moves to a small town. And so this young girl has to deal with the loss of her mom, the loss of her friends, going to a new school, moving to a new town. So that one was pretty tough, but I understood grief because I'd been through grief so much, lost my sister, lost my mom, friends, grandparents. So it was tough writing about her enduring grief. But at the same time, it was very healing for me. It was very therapeutic. And at the end, she has this moment where she finally forgives herself. She thinks she caused her mom's death, so she kind of has to forgive herself. And I had to go through that too with my own mom's death. So yeah, I mean, in my Love and Romance in Italy series, it deals with, a woman who's been left by her husband. He leaves her for another woman. That's pretty tough. She's in her 50s and she's thinking life's over. And then another woman loses her husband, and she's in her 50s too, and now she's scared to death. She doesn't know what's going to happen to her. And because I work with grief support, I've heard these stories from women, and I've seen how difficult it is for them to get by when they thought they would be in their 80s or 90s, with their spouse, and now all of a sudden they're all by themselves. So I wanted to write this series of books for women in their 50s to kind of encourage them that life isn't over, that you can go out and still have adventures. So yeah, it's hard to write these topics that are difficult, but at the same time it can be very therapeutic too.
So far, from the books that you have had the chance to release and get out there, what's been the overall reception that you have received so far?
Oh yeah, my surprisingly, my Christmas stories have done really well. I released a Christmas novel a couple of years ago called Bridges of Hope, and that became a bestseller. I was really shocked. It was just my first attempt at a Christmas story. And then I decided to do a cozy mystery Christmas novella last year, and that became a bestseller too. And so that was quite a shocker, but there's an audience out there who loves these kinds of cozy mysteries or just these love stories set at Christmas time. Christmas seems to be a big thing that people love to read about. So, and I love Christmas, so I'm definitely going to keep doing those books. But yeah, that really resonated. And then my Love and Romance in Italy series really resonated with readers because most of these types of stories, the protagonist is in her 30s, but these women are in their 50s. And I heard back from a lot of readers saying that they really liked that because they were in their 50s, and they like seeing these women, older women, going on adventures, especially in Italy too. So that one continues to sell really well. That series does, which is a thrill. We're going back to Italy next year, so I'll probably get another book series out of that out of that trip.
So you also are a podcast host as well, and you host the podcast A Writer's Day. Tell me a little bit about the backstory behind what made you want to become a podcaster.
Oh yeah. I left the classroom 10 years ago in 2016 and started working in higher education at a local university. But I still had all these writing lessons that I never got to teach. And so I thought, well, maybe I can start a podcast and just talk about writing. So a friend of mine at work showed me how to do it, and I realized it really wasn't that expensive. You just have to, pay for a really good microphone, although now I just use Zoom, right? But I found that it wasn't that expensive and it was pretty easy to do. So in 2019, I started the podcast, A Writer's Day, to talk about the writing craft. And then some of my author friends started contacting me saying, can I come on your podcast to talk about my book? And I said, sure. So now all of a sudden I had these writers that I was interviewing. And then their publishers were contacting me saying, hey, can I send you more authors to interview? So I said, sure. So it kind of evolved into an interview podcast. But I still talk about writing here and there, but it's mostly now an interview podcast. And I interview for about three different publishers, some indie authors. So yeah, it's been great to connect with all these people I hadn't known before. I'm starting to interview publishers, small house publishers for nonfiction authors and fiction authors. So it's been a real blessing. I've met so many nice people. It encourages me to keep writing because there's plenty of times when I've wanted to just quit, and then I'll interview an author whose story is amazing. And when I log off, I just want to go back and start writing. They motivate me. So, yeah, so it started 7 years ago.
So, do you think that the craft of writing and being an author is kind of underlooked? Do you think a lot of authors don't get the credibility that they deserve?
It's hard. It really is. Especially when you're an indie author, you have to market yourself. You have to create your own brand. And it's really about trust. Most readers have their set of authors that they love. They have a genre that they love, and they're very devoted to certain authors who write in that genre. So if you're trying to break into that genre, you have to build trust with these readers. You have to show them, I really can write. You can buy my book and see that I really can do it. So it is pretty tough. You have a lot of obstacles in your way. If you can't get in with a traditional publisher, indie publishing is an option, and it's a lot easier than it was when I first started in like 2012. But even if you're traditionally published, you still have to work. They don't help
Mhm.
out with marketing anymore like they used to. You still have to have a platform, a brand. You have to be on social media all the time. And now book talk is the big thing. So you have to kind of know the business. But yeah, it's hard. Sometimes you get overlooked. You may have written a fantastic science fiction book, but people are going to compare it to Project Hail Mary, and that's just the way it is. So you have
Mhm.
to try and find your niche. You have to kind of tap into those readers and build their trust.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how the world of authors and how you can post and promote books now has really changed over the past few years. Um, what advice would you give to someone that's maybe wanting to become an author and uh, maybe are wanting to maybe go down the regular traditional publishing industry? How can you help others navigate through that time and get that kind of publishing and how they can do it smoothly?
Sure. Well, I recommend going to some writing conferences. That's where a lot of agents are, and there you can book an appointment with them and pitch your idea. So then that means you have to know your story. You have to be able to sit down and pitch it to an agent who only has, to 10 minutes to meet with you. So if they ask you, tell me about your story, and you start rambling on, they're not going to talk with you much longer. So it's a skill. It really is. You have to know how to pitch your story, know what it's about, and going to those conferences is the best way to get with an agent. Most traditional publishers won't even look at your story without an agent. And the main reason is copyright. They don't want to be accused of copyright infringement, so they want that layer of protection. So if you can get a literary agent behind you, then they can go and pitch your story to a whole bunch of different publishers. They have to sell it to them. But even then, it's a an upward climb because they meet as a committee and they listen to all these different story ideas. So they might listen to 100, and yours is one of 100. So there's your odds of getting selected, right? So I don't want to paint a horrible picture because I have many friends who went to conferences, pitched to an agent, signed with an agent, and then got their book published. So it can happen. Another avenue is writing contests. I have so many friends who won contests, and then agents contacted them and said, I'd like to sign with you. Your story sounds amazing. So maybe think about entering some contests out there. A lot of agents are looking for the winners there. So go to writing conferences, meet with an agent, or enter your books, enter your story into a contest and try and win. And if you can win, that tends to open a lot of doors. So that's for traditional publishing. You have to have an agent behind you. It's tough to get an agent. You have to have a thick skin because of the rejection. But number one, you have to know your story. They're going to ask you as soon as you sit down, tell me about your story. And you have to be able to say it in such a way that they are intrigued, and usually you can start off with, what if, a boy entered a mystical forest and encountered a dragon who, instead of burning him to smithereens, showed him a portal and took him on this adventure. That agent might be like, oh, that sounds interesting. So you have to be able to pitch your story in a very direct and concise way, and yet make it sound really amazing to where the agent wants to know more. So,
Now, when it comes to your stories, what is the overall message or kind of the main takeaway that you want readers to get when they read your stories?
well, with the fantasy, I know there's a lot of dark fantasy out there, and that's fine. I'm not a reader of it, but I know a lot of kids are. But for my fantasy stories, I want them to see light and hope. The character goes through a lot. He's beat up quite a bit, but he keeps going. So I want readers to see that he never gives up. And there's female characters in there too, teenagers who are, elves who are teenagers, and they're very resilient as well. And there's darkness. The villains are pretty bad, but there's always hope and light at the end. So that's kind of what I want for readers of fantasy to get from my stories. And then for my suspense, I mean, I know that, reading about a serial killer is kind of dark, but I always put hope and light in those stories as well. So it's not just constant darkness and evil. The evil, the bad guy isn't always caught, and that's just the way it is in life, but there's a satisfying resolution to the main problem, in that the characters, they're resilient and they don't give up, and that there's hope in the stories too. So that's kind of what I want my readers to walk away with from all my stories, whether they're about a serial killer or a trip to Italy. I want them to think, okay, yeah, sometimes the villain won, but there's still hope in the story. So,
Are you currently working on any books right now? And if so, can you give a little teaser about what you may have coming up in the future?
sure, yeah, I'm working on a sequel to my cozy mystery novella that I released last year. It was called Murder at Christmas Tree Village, and I'll let your listeners know the sequel title is Mystery at Christmas Tree Village. And so that's what I'm working on next. Same group of characters, but a new situation happens. It's not a murder mystery, but it is a mystery that has to be solved that involves the whole town. And so that's coming up. I'm working on my next coloring book, which will be an offshoot of the Dragon Forest. So that'll be fun. It's kind of showing more visuals about that book, that story. So that'll be fun. And I'm working on a nonfiction book that's called Ask Why. And it stems from how in my life I've been asked why, why do you write? Why do you teach? Why do you podcast? Why do you run these crazy distances? Why do you do your art? So I thought I would encourage readers. It's kind of a motivational book about how important it is to know your why. Why do you want to be an author? And if your answer is, well, to make money and get famous, well, that's good, but what are you going to do if that doesn't happen? Why are you? It has to go deeper, more intrinsic. So I'm writing a nonfiction called Ask Why, and that'll come out in September. And then, of course, next year, I'm super excited. I've got two more suspense books coming out, and then a fantasy, another dragon book. I haven't written a dragon book in probably 3 years. So I'm excited to write a dragon book next year. It might be a standalone, but I have a feeling it's going to be a three-book series. We'll see how long it is, but that's exciting. It's been a while, and I'm super excited to write that story.
Well, Ruth, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your story and to this have a good sit down interview with me. For people interested in learning more about your work, if they would like to check your books out, they would like to follow you on your podcast, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, you can go to my website at artbyruth.com, and there you'll see books, my artwork. You can listen to my podcast there. You can click on the books and you can buy them there. So that's the best place to go. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get a free PDF copy of my novella, a suspense novella called The Letter Opener. And that'll give you a taste of my writing style. And yeah, so head over to artbyruth.com, and that's where everything's located.
And I will put all of her links and stuff in the description box below. So just feel free to check the show notes and description box for those notes and for those links. I think feel free to follow the podcast on the socials. You can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. Feel free to just go to my website, noahspodcasts.com, to learn more about this show as well as the other shows that I do. My dog is currently wanting to share something in the background. Uh, Feel free to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified of when new episodes like this come out in the future. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe,
Thanks,
and I will see
Noah.
you in the next episode of Southern Reads.